like to introduce both Storm Russo and Lee McKay from Valencia College.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. How are we doing this morning? It's great to be here. Storm and I are going to do the get to know each other thing just like you guys did. So I'm going to introduce Storm and let you know a little bit about Storm. He's been a colleague of mine for the last 8 years here at Valencia. But some of the things you need to know about him, he's been with Valencia for 23 years. He is the cornerstone of the business department, not only on our East Campus where I teach with him, but also for the entire college. We always depend on Storm to get things done, and he's the guy that does that. Some things you may not know about Storm. Storm was a former all-state football player in high school, and he played at the University of Florida football. He is also a scratch golfer, which I'm really jealous. Since my knee surgery, I can't swing as well as I used to back in the day. He also used to be owner of 2 construction companies, and he's currently an owner of an entertainment company along with his cousin in his hometown we know of as Key West, and that's in Florida. That's Storm Russo.
As you heard, this is Lee McKay. We have known each other for 13, 14 years now. Prior to coming to Valencia, he was in the sales and marketing industry, advertising areas. As you heard, friends with Jeff. Great addition to Valencia. I say addition even though you've been there for 14 years as an adjunct and full-time 11 years. I consider that an addition. Great addition, has helped me out tremendously. As you will see in today's presentation, he's more of the upfront person. Hopefully his presentation will go long so you won't have to hear my portion of it. I'm more of the background type of person. Something interesting about Lee, former referee for collegiate basketball. He actually looks like a basketball coach to me. The first time I met him, he just looks like I don't know what it is, it's just a demeanor. Looks like a basketball coach to me. So I want to say thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. So what we're going to do, Storm and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the economic opportunities here in Central Florida, as well as what happened in the post-election after the recent presidential election. So we're first of all going to talk a little bit about some statistics, and then we're going to get into some of the challenges I think you guys could probably relate to, and then talk to you a little bit about some of the opportunities that we've seen here in Central Florida for jobs as well as in several industries. So let's get started and talk about first some of the key statistics. All right, so number one, I don't know whether you're aware of this, the military simulation industry is number 1 in Central Florida. It is the preeminent military simulation complex in the entire world, which is absolutely unbelievable. One of the things I want to mention to you, this relates directly to my family, because my older brother Chuck, is an owner of a military simulation company based in Virginia. And he does aircraft simulation for all branches of the military as well as NGOs. And he is so busy with Lockheed Martin, one of his largest clients, that he had opened a Central Florida location just down the street from Lockheed Martin. That's how vibrant this military simulation industry is today here in Central Florida. Number 2, any guesses as to who the second largest university in the nation is? UCF, right after Arizona State. That's a big draw as well. Number 3 in the country as far as one of the best cities for jobs by Forbes magazine. We're behind Plano, Texas, and behind Scottsdale, Arizona. And Scottsdale, Arizona is right down the street from the largest university in the country, and that's Arizona State University, just to let you know. The MSA here in Orlando will not slow down. The unemployment rate is at a record low of 4.2%. 4.2% is going to make it difficult for you guys to find qualified candidates. That's for sure. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. You can go to the next slide, Storm. That'd be great. Thank you. That brings to mind the numbers of people coming in. 138 people a day come into Orlando. But that doesn't mean all of them are qualified to work at your particular company. The professional services sector is growing like a weed, an all-time high of 210,000 people here in Central Florida. And also, too, as you're probably well aware, you're getting a lot of resumes, but you don't have enough qualified people to fill the positions you should have, especially in professional services. And you don't have a social media recruiting strategy. How many of you have a social media recruiting strategy, besides you? That I saw that earlier. What's that? Yeah. Anyone else have a social media? What kinds of things are you doing for social media?
Primarily LinkedIn.
Okay.
You know, I've opened 3 groups
Okay.
to capture people that are in our industry, and then I can see their.
How successful is that for you?
I've hired 3 employees through that process.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
we're only 40 employees, so it's.
Okay, that's pretty good.
10% of our workforce.
That's pretty good. Anyone else using social media to recruit? Because one of the things that, oh, go ahead, Dave.
So we're a
How
consulting
successful is
business.
that?
For us, people are our new products.
Yeah.
People are everything for us. And I'd say we do pretty well, but have a lot to learn and many chances to improve.
Okay. What is, yes,
I was gonna say one more thing about
Yeah.
that. We also use social media to investigate potential employees that we didn't find through social media. You know, we had one lady, we're looking for a marketing intern, and she said she's a marketing intern. I went and looked at the company she's working for, and there had no marketing, so really didn't see that as a plus.
Feels the truth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. One of the things that some of the research that I found are that some companies are a little hesitant to get on social media because they're afraid of sullying their brand, for lack of a better term, because some people will post some things on Facebook that are not complimentary about the company and may keep people away just because of some of the things that people say, maybe they're not true, that's online in Facebook. And that's one of the reasons why some companies don't get on Facebook and other social media. LinkedIn is a great source for candidates, but Facebook is also a good source as well. Many applications, not enough time and not enough manpower. The problem is budgets. One of the budgets that for recruiting has not kept up with the demand for the jobs, and as a result, there's no follow-up for those that are interested in going to work. The other thing is how do you keep valuable people? Retention is a really, really big issue. How many of you have issues with keeping really good, top-notch employees at your companies? No one's raising their hand.
No one raising their hand, so then I would like to follow up with
Yeah.
what strategies are you using to keep them?
Right.
I'd like to hear from a few. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We pay for lunch for our employees every day. We're very flexible with vacations. We're generous with our salaries and bonuses. So we try to treat them really well.
That's great.
We treat our team members like their family.
Yeah.
So vacations, some, certain ones, key people
Sure.
go with us on our vacations, especially summer vacation when we're slower. Lunch, rewards, and, that type of thing, and then completely flexible with time off, and, you just trust them that they're doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, and they usually almost always exceed what we're expecting.
Right. Interesting. What about benefits, employee benefits such as healthcare, dental, tuition reimbursement, things like that? Those some of the tactics are you using?
For a good company, that's not.
401k, health insurance. Years ago, it was so hard to find a company plan for a small company, but I asked my employees and they're all, number one item they wanted, more than a raise, more than anything else, was health insurance. And I couldn't find a plan that they could afford.
Hopefully things change.
It's Congress. The health insurance thing, we actually,
Yeah.
the past 2 years with ACA was we had a vote within the company, do you want us to, we give you X amount of money every month for your health insurance.
Sure.
Do you want that in cash and go buy your own plan, or do you want to stick with whatever group plan we can get?
Right.
2 years in a row now, they voted to stick with a group plan, and I will say Doug bailed us out big time this year on the plan we got versus the
Good.
plan we were going to get. Although I think I ruined it in January with my surgery, but. We had a meeting with employees, we're on it's a private, partially self-funded plan. So
Yeah.
he can explain to you, but a certain amount of our money goes into a reserve, and if we don't spend it all, then we do well. I spent about 100,000 of it in January, so.
What kind of turnover rates do you have? I mean, I don't want to get too personal into some of the information, but I'm just curious because I hear about that all the time in local business, shaking your head, no turnover whatsoever.
No, I sometimes I'd like to have more turnover. No, my guys stuck with me for years and years and years, yeah.
People are saying that our part-timers are like revolving doors.
But like Ann says, I mean, it's treat them like their family,
Yeah.
I'm concerned about, their housing, their car, their kids, their wife, whatever.
Sure.
And I try to maintain just a family atmosphere that everybody wants stuff for everybody else.
I will say though, with the younger employees, I won't say the word, they're when they come in, they're telling you they're not going to stick around for more than a couple of years because they have other things they want to do. Even if it's a great company and you enjoy working there, they still want to go do something else. So I don't see them being the 20, 30-year employees going forward. They're going to be the 3 to 5 year employees moving on, which is not a bad thing. They just want other experiences and
Sure.
Because they'll expect to be vice presidents in 50 years.
Well, that's the other thing. If they're not in charge of everyone, that could be another issue, but at the same time, they're not going to stick around, even if they are vice presidents. They're going to move. Because you say that word and they shut down.
Well, I read a study within 4,010 years of north.
So I'd say that's where most of my turnover is in that age group.
You took the next question I was going to ask was, she mentioned that with the part-timers, I was going to ask this specific question, what are the demographics of those individuals? Because I think Lee and I, we may have an interesting perspective being in the classroom, even though we have traditional, non-traditional students and things like that. One question I always ask the 19-year-old student, once they finish their program, whatever that program may be, I'm always curious to see what they believe their first position will be, how much will they be making, and things like that. And I just have a quick question for you. What do you think the average Valencia student finishing up their program, what do you think they consider to be the average starting salary? Believe it or not, most of them are around $75,000 a year they expect to be making within the first to 2 years. About half, yeah, about half that. Yeah, so we hear that a lot, and we also, I know on the flip side, we know have some people here in the financial industry. I also ask on the flip side, what's the average age of someone in the classroom right now that they will retire? And most of them are saying around 55 to 60, so.
If you make 75 your first year out, you should be able to.
There you go. I guess they do have that figured out. Their priorities set there. So it's interesting because when we start talking about.
Say most of it.
I'm sorry?
I said, and you're still living with your parents, so you should be able to say that.
There you go. There you go. They're the ones that are working till 80, 85 so that their children can retire at 55.
Expectations, that's what these students have, expectations that are not realistic. And they go to work and it's like a cold slap in the face with them.
I spent 2 years trying to hire graphic artists, haven't hired one yet.
Oh my goodness. And it seems like that's like a great field, a trending
They
field.
want massive pay and they want to come to work in their pajamas. Or they don't want to come to work, they want to work out of their house, come and go as they please, and they just can't understand.
And listening to a lot of you in the specific industries in that, I don't know if they all run into the same thing, but dealing with a lot of individuals in that field, a lot of them obviously are not looking necessarily for that full-time one position, a lot of contracting work and things like that. So that's maybe another trend we see. There you go. That's like I say, certain fields, it's not going to, I'm going to come in this month to build something.
How many of you, are you as as employers, allowing your employees to use flex time and/or to work out of their house or a virtual office. How's that working? How's that working for you?
Well, remember that we are based now in Chile, we're just starting over here. But
Okay.
down there, it depends on the employee. There are some kind of employee that they don't get it, and you have to finally fire them because they, how do you say, they abuse of those rules, of those flexibility. But we have a lot of people that they get very well with that.
Okay. So you're looking at discipline as one of the reasons why they're not performing or they are performing. It's because they're self-discipline.
Self-discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah, self-discipline.
Okay. What about flex time? Many of you had your hand up for flex time. How's flex time working versus having to show up?
For certain employees, it is. We've got a couple that we allow to do it. We're general contractors, so obviously
Sure.
our superintendents and project managers have to kind of be there all the time. But
Right.
have a comptroller, bookkeeper lady that
Okay.
she gets flex time and it works out fine. So
Okay. Just as long as she gets the job done.
she gets the job done.
Yeah. It doesn't
And
matter.
I'd say the problem there is
Yeah.
you can't make it a policy in your handbook because not everybody can manage.
Right.
And that's where you get into a danger zone and you start putting those elements in there. It's like, well, Bob's doing it, why can't I? Well, because when you do it, you don't do anything. So,
Yeah.
So we don't have that as a
Yeah,
policy.
yeah, it's situational, employee by employee. Yeah.
I wonder if that's, and once again, not to say the word, if that's a if that's a sort of a situation with a current generation, because maybe in the educational arena we're looking at seeing the growing of online classes to work when you want to work, not necessarily at a 10 to 11, 15 type of classroom setting. So same thing with the work schedules. We see a lot of students
Bad,
that,
very bad. I mean, my son's the one he mentioned at Florida. He's a senior. He's going to be a fifth-year senior, but his first 3 years of school, I'd say 90% of his classes were available online, or he could go to 7 a.m. So I'm not going to do that. So he did online, and that's terrible. It doesn't teach you anything you really need to to be on time, to show up, to engage. And the dean over at the business school at UCF is actually fighting against online classes. The last couple of blogs he's written about that they should eradicate those. So I don't think they're good, and I don't necessarily think they're good for employees because they need to interact and engage and communicate with each other. And it's kind of like that Sandra Bullock movie that came out a long time ago, where she worked from home and didn't know anybody and got in trouble. So I don't think it's a good idea. But I'll just say, you're asking about those guys. One of my best employees, who's one of them, he's been with me 5 years now. He's leaving. This is the second time he's tried to quit. I'm finally letting him go. And he's leaving just to go follow his muse and do something different. He's more engaged and more responsible than many of my boomers, if you will. But it's just his time to go. He can't stick around and talk.
that's interesting, because when we mentioned, I heard a couple of people say the idea of family, and a lot of the organizations here and the employees. And if you agree or not, but just in my little world in the classroom, I talk a lot about that and ask students, and they're not looking for something longer than 5 years. 5 years is a max that they're looking at. They feel, and I hate to hear the terminology saying, and I hear students say this a lot, saying, if I'm in an organization for 5 years, I've already learned everything I can. And I hate when someone says that. I don't want to hear that. But I've already learned everything I can. I need to go to another organization to further.
And the part they don't understand is what everything they learn costs you money to teach them.
Most definitely.
Yeah. No doubt. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay, good. Thanks. I mentioned to you earlier the cost of hiring is increasing, and that has a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of traffic coming in and out of your companies for those folks that are interested in working for you, and you don't have enough people, you don't have enough money to do it properly, and how do you figure out how much money you need for recruiting? How many of you, besides social media, use other websites or other sources for recruiting top people for your company? What
Indeed.
kinds of things are you using?
Indeed.com.
Indeed? Okay. Okay, you're doing that as well? Okay, all right. Those are great sources, but I think some of the old-fashioned ways of doing things like we're doing here today, the networking, the old-fashioned way of networking is also really, really important, simply because of the relationships that you had mentioned in person that you establish with people that you actually meet as opposed to meeting them online. And that's also very, very effective as well. Different year, same issue with healthcare workers, there are too many job openings and not enough qualified people. One of the things that we're doing here at Valencia, UCF is also doing this, and at Seminole State, the curriculum is being tied in directly to the needs of the hospitals and other healthcare companies in Central Florida, so that when nurses or other professionals that are hired by healthcare companies can go to work and be productive from day one. So the curriculum at those 3 schools matches exactly what the job skills that are necessary to go to work, say, at a hospital as a registered nurse, one example. There's a major shortage of home healthcare workers as well. As you're probably aware, baby boomers like me, there are a lot of us, and we're getting older, and we need home healthcare as we get older. And so that demand is huge, but the problem is there isn't enough people to take care of us at home. And one of the reasons is there's not enough money in it for the people that are working there, and the hours are not regular hours during daylight. They're usually at night, very early in the morning, and on weekends. And so it doesn't attract the best type of worker in that particular industry, and thus that's the reason why there's a very, very major shortage of home healthcare workers. Okay? Hard to hire top candidates in a competitive environment simply because one foot is out the door if the other guy has better healthcare benefits. Have you seen that yourself? Where somebody has left your company or has taken an offer with a competitive company because that particular company had better benefits. Have you seen that personally in your business?
We were a training ground for large companies.
Oh, really?
You were there then. It was a 6 to 7 year cycle. We were dealing with younger people. And one of our workers had this vacation club, Tulsa University, Disney, because we couldn't afford to keep them and the benefits.
Right. So they left because of the benefits of those larger
Well, that was
organizations.
one of the reasons, not the only.
Okay.
What we do, they like to concentrate on one account, say.
Sure.
That state to use.
Yeah.
So less stress because every study I've ever read, money's number 3 or 4. I personally never read it. More about stress and anxiety and work environment. It's stuff you've been talking about.
Right. And recognition, too. Recognition is really a big thing. Just a pat on the back actually goes a long way, and that doesn't cost you anything. That's saying you did a great job.
But then their personality type, do you do it publicly so people like that?
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, you got to watch in that situation too. That's true.
Too complex.
Yeah. And as we're probably already well aware, the hospitality and leisure industry has a great job shortage, even though we are adding 138 new people here coming into Central Florida every day. There's still that shortage because the theme parks are always looking for really, really qualified people. Let's look at some of the opportunities. The ones in green that we have up there, those are the industries that have the best opportunities here in Central Florida, according to OrlandoJobs.com. And most of that starting page you can see is between $60,000 and $90,000. I don't know that recent college graduates would qualify for those. And those are folks that are generally have some level of experience, depending on the industry, to expect that kind of a salary range. But that's where the opportunities are. I don't know whether you're aware of this, and besides the I-4, everybody is aware of the I-4 project, and that's certainly big, and that's going to be with us for way too long. The 408 construction project is ongoing. OIA, which is Orlando International Airport, has a brand new intermodal terminal facility. I don't know whether you've seen that south of the airport, and that's going to be opening up in a year or so. They're going to be opening, I think, in May, a brand-new people mover that's going to be automated, that's going to go into that terminal. It's going to replace, also, I think they mentioned the North Terminal as well. Another opportunity, I know whether you're aware of, Universal Studios is going to open, I believe it's May 25th, Volcano Bay. It's going to be a brand-new theme park. It's water-based. And one of the unusual things about this is, I guess, a point of difference, is that Volcano Bay, if you're interested in going, you will not wait in line 1 minute, because they provide these bands, these waterproof bands that you wear on your wrist, that will, all you have to do is wave it in front of a reader, in front of one of the rides that you want to go on, and if you have to wait in line, you don't have to, you go do something else. And when your place in line gets to that point where you can enter the ride, they notify you, you can go over and you get right out without having to wait. It's a great thing. The other thing about it is that band also has some intelligence to it, so that when you're walking through various aspects of Volcano Bay, you can actually wave that band, and it provides a multimedia spectacle that's tailored to you. It's unbelievable. So that's one of the great things about Volcano Bay. Also, they just opened a new resort hotel there, Universal. And I don't have it up here, but Disney is also opening up a new attraction that's going to be based on that movie. And what was that? Yeah, Pandora, the world of Avatar. And that's going to be opening up in just a few months. So those are a couple opportunities there as well.
I do have one question when we look at the idea of infrastructure and rebuilding. I know that I've heard we've got some large national and even international organizations in here. What are the positives of organizations moving at least some of their facilities to Central Florida, but what are some of the negatives or reasons why they don't? I'm always curious when it comes to infrastructure, transportation issues and things like that. What are some of the positives you hear or use to maintain your organization here, but what are some of the negatives as well? I mean, when we talk about, like, I always hear public transportation.
Yeah.
No, I want to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah.
I'm moving over here. So.
That's what I'm saying, because especially the international organizations.
Yeah, man.
What do we
do?
do?
Some perspective.
Oh, please do.
I've had my own business for the last 11 years. Before that, I worked for a company called Chef.
Yeah, Pelican.
So, I mean, they're a $3 billion global business. Not everybody knows about them, but they're kind of behind the scenes company. But they moved their headquarters from Orlando to Atlanta. This was after I left the company, because they felt that there weren't enough qualified professional workers in Orlando to pull the talent pool from to meet the needs of the growth.
So one area is qualified workers, qualified work pool.
I was at a chamber meeting a couple of months ago, and a gentleman by the name of Ray Leach that started Jumpstart that kind of turned Cleveland around. It was the speaker of our group, and he shared this Milken Institute survey or study that was done, and Orlando ranked number 9 as the largest, 9th of the top 10 best performing large cities in the country. Orlando, MSA. And he said, can you imagine Orlando being number 1? And so he shared with us all the key indicators that they used in this ranking. And the 4 areas where we ranked the lowest was high-tech GDP growth for the 10-year cycle in the last year, and then high-tech GDP concentration, and then a location quotient that I don't really understand yet. But the point is, with some emphasis in the high-tech area, more emphasis in the industry as a whole, it could accelerate the economic ecosystem that we have today, which is very good. And so it's just kind of a think tank. Why is that? And one of it is the limited access to capital from a venture capital standpoint. We have very limited resources in this area, and as such, you have companies that are relocating to California and DC and Boston, that the access to capital is more prominent. And I just thought that was interesting, and I think that's an area that I know in the business community, the organizations that I'm involved in, is really trying to put something together. Like I said, this guy started
start that took Cleveland from the bottom of the barrel and is now one of the most, number 9, I think, is one of the top user-friendly entrepreneur areas.
Do you think that's because small banking is more prevalent in those areas where it's easier to get money?
No, what they did,
Dealing with big banks?
no is the answer, because we, as a commercial bank, that's not our playing field. That's, our risk profile as far as lending money isn't in that arena. We'd like it to be, but that's just not who we are. Once you're up and running 2 years out, we're the low-cost provider of funds. But what they did is they started a nonprofit, check this oxymoron, nonprofit venture capital. And you should Google it, Jumpstart. It's very interesting what they did to turn Cleveland around, but their focus was all in the technology sector, because that's the growing, obviously, sector that's very prominent throughout all of our economies in the country. So they focused on that sector and bridged that gap by putting together this nonprofit economic or venture capital group, and they turned Cleveland around.
Interesting.
Yeah, because that-
I can second the lack of venture capital in Orlando. I think that spreads out all the way across Central Florida to some degree. Raymond James's headquarters is based in St. Pete, so they do a lot of the venture capital side, because of the resources and things that they have over in Tampa. But for Orlando, there's definitely a shortfall. A lot of companies are looking for venture capitalists in our economy.
I can tell you a little bit why I selected Orlando.
Thank you.
Being a Latin American company and being involved in obviously there are a lot of reasons, but for instance, first of all, why the U.S.? Because we're a Latin American company. Freedom. You may not realize it, but freedom is one of the biggest issues from the U.S. The second one, weather. You have an excellent weather right here. You're not freezing in New York or stuff like that. Okay? You also have to be near Latin America. That's a good point for Florida in general. Yeah. And Orlando, infrastructure. You don't realize, but you don't put the bill in infrastructure here. The tourists do. They may be annoying sometimes, but they pay the bills. Not the ones that live here. And besides that, I love business.
Yeah, but that's why Russo is terrific for all those reasons, except they're not close to South America. But they have the venture capital, plus their marketing.
Yeah, but they don't have the beach near. You know, a lot of
Yeah, but they
things
have
that
the
we
talent to come, the big ones are all due to, the answer to your question, UCF's number 2, but Arizona State's number 1. Everyone's trying to
don't make me change my mind.
No. No, I hate favorites. And there's sports teams there.
The airport is nice.
Yeah, the airport is nice.
So I hear a lot about the idea of venture capitalism and capitalists and ideas, but I was just curious, and I don't need to go too more in depth into it. I was just wondering about other things that are drawing companies to the Central Florida area besides, outside of work. That's something that I think that we need to take advantage of as well. You mentioned the tourism idea, but some of the other things, the arts and entertainment that are bringing companies in.
Central Florida alone.
Yeah.
I'll make a comment about that. So in a past life as a corporate executive, we moved about 1,200 people from the suburb of Chicago to Columbus, Ohio.
Ooh.
And part of my job as the leader of that business was to get people excited about Columbus, Ohio. And I learned things like Columbus is actually the 11th largest metro in the US, great educational, great school system, great healthcare and all that stuff. But I couldn't get anybody interested in Columbus, Ohio, just because it wasn't anywhere near as interesting a city, anywhere near as cosmopolitan as the Chicago metro area that we have. So from the introduction earlier, I'm probably the one out-of-towner in this room, and I can tell you that your geographic area is an interesting geographic area in terms of where people want to raise a family, want to build a lifestyle and things like that, and that's probably one of the biggest selling points, kind of the fun selling, you in Vegas, but I don't think you compete, right? It's,
Yeah, we're more friendly.
Yeah, just
Different audience.
Yeah.
enjoyable family environment, considering weather and activities and things like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But speaking of capital funding, as you had mentioned, how many of you are using online capital accumulation sites like GoFundMe and places like that for projects that venture capitalists normally would help fund? How many of you are using sites like that, out of curiosity?
Something that,
Yeah. What kind of success did you have with those kinds of sites?
well, it's new, so it's
Yeah.
a little, everybody that I've got, I think a dozen, it's a little triangle shaped, wide erase board. So you divide your day into 3 sectors.
Okay.
And challenge yourself out to complete tasks on time within the 3 sectors. And people that I've given it to liked it, but I don't know that I can really answer as far as there's no tracking for success or anything yet.
Interesting, okay. Anyone else use online? Yes, sir.
I'm involved with SCORE, and we've seen a number of companies get initially funded through Kickstarter.
Right.
And Kickstarter is, the whole industry is evolving, and the SEC is
Yeah.
involved now. We
Right.
become an equity-based element to it, but
Right.
I mean, there's no way to get funds out there at that lower level, from that venture standpoint, and
Right.
that whole industry is starting to kick off.
Yeah.
You have to have a business with a lot of sizzle though for someone to get the
Pardon
interest.
me?
You have to have a business with a lot of sizzle though for someone to get the interest of going on
You have to have a
Kickstarter.
really good product and
So I mean,
good business plan.
a lot of brick and mortar type businesses aren't
No.
going to get that
I
kind
can't
of.
even imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's starting to change with the equity crowdfunding now, because it'll be kind of like it's almost like if you're Microsoft and you're selling shares of your company, that's what you're able to do now on a small business level. But I think legislation's just kind of kicked in the last 6 months or so.
Starting.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because that is another source of capital, so. Yeah. Last slide that I had before, we talk about since the presidential election, these are what employers are looking for high-skilled folks. And I'm sure that you can all resemble that, for sure. But again, these are folks that primarily have a college education, or they have a specific skill, like pipe fitters, as an example. And a lot of the community colleges, including Valencia, has curriculum for folks that are interested in HVAC, that are interested in other automobile mechanics and fire science, and the police academy as well. So these are kinds of things that we do at Valencia for those that aren't going to pursue an associate's degree or move on for a bachelor's degree and beyond. But those are the kinds of opportunities that are available out there. And I know many of you are looking for that. So Storm is now going to talk a little bit about the impact of the presidential election and what's going on with some economic statistics.
And for sake of time, I don't know if I'll show a video. We only got a few minutes here. Go for it. I don't know if that's good or bad, but not to be controversial or anything like that. I'm not going to take any political stance one way or another, so please don't. Students don't know who I voted for. I never let them know.
So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations, President.
We are officially putting Grennan on notice.
Today I am keeping another promise by nominating Judge Neil Gorsuch.
I find that the temporary restraining order is in the public interest.
The Vice President votes in the affirmative and the nomination is confirmed.
This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine. He didn't tell the Vice President of the United States the facts. The Star is born. We are fighting the fake news. A new chapter of American greatness is now beginning.
I have recused myself.
The FBI is investigating the nature of any link between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
We were very close with no Democrat support. These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated.
So help me God.
We will have a massive tax cut.
Well, as you can see, some very interesting and divisive and controversial things happen depending on which side you stand. And like I say, I'm not political at all, nor do I want to be in any setting or anything like that. So just want to take a look at some of the situation with the economic outlook. And after hearing all of your backgrounds and things like that, actually you probably should be the ones up here talking about this more than myself, because you have some great experiences and knowledge. But when we take a look at the idea of the economic indicators, they do look healthy, obviously. The gross domestic product, one of the most important ones that we are taking a look at all the time. You can see that it's predicted to continue to rise to that 2.1% level in 2017, which is faster than last year a little bit. Unemployment rate, as Lee mentioned, 4.5%. That's better than last year, of course, so you can see that we're trending in the right direction as well. Inflation rates actually going up a little bit, but once again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because last year's inflation rates actually were because of declining oil prices and things like that going down and so forth. We mentioned in our area, but also nationwide, manufacturing is starting to grow. Actually, that's predicted to grow faster than the overall general economy, grow by at least 3%, so you can see growing faster than the GDP. Interest rates, I don't know, we have a couple of people in the constructions arena and financial area and things like that. I just purchased another home and saw my interest rates going up recently, but maybe I should have talked to somebody in here about that. So looking at some of the areas, areas that are likely winners post-election, some of the things, oil, obviously we've talked about how oil prices affect things and things like that. That as a major change, depending upon which side would get into the White House, oil drillers, pipelines, coal specifically, all are going to increase. It's going to affect the prices of a lot of different items and things like that. The banking arena, I know we've got several people in here that could talk more about that. What do you think some of the general ideas are happening in the banking area?
I think a lot of it is just based on this, the expectation or speculation that there's going to be some deregulation or some changes to Dodd-Frank, and that could contribute to looser, lending standards to some extent.
Mm-hmm. And you think that will be, the Dodd-Frank will be? That's a discussion right now. That's the major discussion right now. Yeah, so that's one area that we take a look at. I think, and Lee mentioned specifically when we look at the defense industry, that's a big area because, of course, not only a huge presence here in Central Florida, but nationwide, looking at the growth of the military, once again on the political side, whichever side you're on, that is obviously going to be growing. So that's an area that we have to take a look at. Do you see anything that you think is not on this list that should be, specific industries that will probably see great growth based upon the election results?
I see one that stands out that I think wouldn't do so well, and that's on the pharmaceutical side. I think, yeah.
A lot of people are.
That's what people thought would be a winner, and I think he's really come down on drug prices.
Yeah, and I think from the scrutiny of the idea of drug prices and things like that, they think, I think because when you take a look at the Affordable Care Act, as you were mentioning, and things like that, how that's going to affect it, I'm not sure. This is what I saw a lot of analysts say that, and I'm glad you pointed that out because it depends upon maybe on the pharmacy side and the healthcare side, two different arenas. I don't know. But obviously, when you take a look at some of the losers after that, one big one could be because we have the coal idea of coal and things like that, renewable energy. When you're looking at some of the Paris agreements and things like that with that. I put the Mexican peso in there specifically, I kind of put that in there myself. When we start looking at some controversial issues with NAFTA and things like that. Healthcare providers, there you go, I see that as the big area. Car makers, Ford specifically, saw some issues right after the election and bringing jobs back and things like that. So I actually could see that as a positive coming back around as well. Telecoms and media, I don't know how you feel about that, but some of the media situations with right after the election, you saw that some of the media were banned you know, and things like that. So we see some of the issues with some of the laws and regulations opening up there.
Actually, there's like, on media, that's what we work with television. FCC is changing the rules, and you know, if you see that market, but there's a bunch of roll-ups, and you're probably going to go from, you know, 5 years ago there were 40 or 50 different owner groups of local stations. In the next 3 to 5 years, there might only be half a dozen mega groups. So, because they're allowing penetration to go from 39% to 50%, so one owner group can cover 50% of the country. So some of the owner groups are going to become networks, like CBS or NBC. So it's been good, actually very good for them. I mean, they just got $10 billion for selling.
And I think that, yeah, I agree with that. And the media, I think, was talking more about some of the regulations they're putting on.
Right, they're deregulating them.
Yeah, that side.
It's also the technology of delivering the media. I mean, it's going to be customized. If you watch this show on Netflix, and Big Data knows you by this, you see the commercial, she sees the different one. So it's going to be splintered, I believe, the opposite. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I agree. And the last one I just put on there, polling and gaming, because I know it sounds horrible, but we bet on this election. I don't know if any of you in the room did. I hope you didn't. I did personally, but I won't say if I won or lost. But it's a gamble that we are betting on the presidential election, and it's a gamble of who's in there. So in the sake of time, I'm not going to, I mean, I have to turn it over. But I think what areas, last thing, what areas are losers, do you think? What areas or industries are really going to have to revamp or change depending upon legislation coming down the pike?
Agriculture, for one. I think if the immigration policies change, it's going to be a real challenge.
Not only the immigration, employment, some trade tariffs and things like that coming from you know, part of North America, Central America as well. We're going to see some issues with that, I think. Yes?
I was curious about also immigration in regard to the construction industry in Central Florida. I would think it would have, I would think able to get the workers for all the construction has got to be really tough right now.
It's a tight market right now. It's a tight market right now, just finding good qualified workers as it is.
In my past life, I was in that arena, and I can, you know, I echo that sentiment. But I did a lot of subcontracting out there, and once you found someone, you need to hold on to them. Yeah, definitely need to hold on to them. Any questions or comments about anything in general?
I would just say that one of the big winners was going to be technology. And you brought up Ford, and I do a lot of work with Ford. And even before the election, they've been gearing down. They're not putting their money in new models and upgrading their models. They're looking to have driverless cars on the road in 25, and all of us will become one car or no car families. So they're putting their money into downsizing their fleet, but putting it into the technology and being the first out there even before, you know, Google and Uber and everybody else. So they're actually gearing down on their own before the election. So technology is a big winner. Actual vehicle manufacturers, you know, if they have the blinders on and say we're a vehicle manufacturer instead of a, you know, transportation or relocation service, then they're going to lose out, like the trains.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.